Okay, I think we're live. Happy New Year, everybody. So quite aptly, this is the 24th edition of the Data Value Show in 2024. So we're just waiting for Karl or Ivo to join us. I think he's just getting his browser sorted. So today's show, we're going to be talking of the value of boutique versus the value of the big four data consultancies. We may be a bit biased on today's show. We'll try and keep it as neutral as possible with our views. It was something that I touched on with Ben Rojan just before New Year as one of the things that we think would change in the new year, and me and Karl had talked about it a few times in the past, and there was a post from Jepson, Ben, who used to work for Data IQ up until recently, had another comment on this as well. So he hasn't turned up though, so you have to put up with me waffling a little bit longer. We've got quite a few topics or points that we put out. Normally I only have 4 or 5, but there's quite a few that we're going to be covering today. And I'll give them a bit more. If anyone's got any questions for today, put them in the comments. We'll look to address them during the chat. Hi Val, I see you're joined, and Zahar, great to see you both. All right, well, maybe I'll start with framing it a little bit, which is one of the I think on one of the posts I did about the event coming up. Back in the old days, no one used to get fired for going IBM or Oracle or one of the big software vendors before. I think that changed over time, and I think the big data ecosystem as it expanded, there were more options, but now we probably are gravitating back to having selecting from some of the big four and the players there now. But the same with consultancy companies. I think we've all seen lots of very nice glossy PowerPoint presentations from some of these big branded consultancies. I think what I've always seen them lacking is the substance to deliver them afterwards. And then if you do go into that stage, I think the other expression I said is it's like a box of chocolates. You don't know what you're going to get when you actually get the delivery on there. So I'll start going through, and hopefully Karl will join us in a bit. Yeah, we can get his views on some of these things. So the first item there was specializations. Aha, there we go. I can hang on. Let me bring Karl in.
Hi there. Hi everyone.
Hi Karl. I was just filling in, bit of a gap filling anyway. So yeah, welcome Karl. I don't start framing it with how I had the pleasure of meeting the guest, and I think it was over a year ago you came across to what was our first data meetup, I think, when Joe was over. And then
yeah, that was in London. That was around on the time that Snowflake had this event.
Exactly.
And then you hosted your event back then.
That's right. I always try and piggyback on these other ones, on the side of them, you get a good crowd. So yeah, so we first met there, and we've had the fun of chatting in Vegas at the summit this year. Always enjoyed our conversations, and we talked and touched on this a little while ago, and it was one of the things I had as a topic on Ben's show of, the difference in the perception now of the big four consultancies, and why 2024 is going to be the year of the boutique. But before we go into that, do you want to give a bit of an intro for yourself and a bit of background for the audience?
Yeah, sure, great. So my name is Karl Ivo. I'm based in Austria, and I lead a 30-person data team within Specific Group. We're about Specific Group is a little under 500 people consulting company in the IT space, an IT implementation company focusing on the German, Swiss, and Austrian market. and we have about 12 offices across Europe. And my background is in computer science, consulting, and also banking. So 2 years ago, I started the Specific Group Data service line within Specific Group, and have been kind of part of this journey to expand the data consulting footprint in Austria, and also now moving also into products with API integration and LLM enabled code translation. So those are the topics that kind of that kind of keep you busy every day. I also have Big Four experience, so that will help in
Got the inside track of your experiences there, which is going to be really useful, because I can't bring that to the table. I've never worked for them, just worked with them.
Although I must say, 12, 13 years ago, there was a different world in how consulting worked than compared to today. I think the world has moved on into changed so much that even though you could say, well, trusted advisors, trusted implementation partners, but the way the work is done is I think very different across the board compared to back then.
Yeah, I think you use that key word which triggered this all as well, is the word trust. And I think I did a post where I think one of the Big Four had been fined for maybe not the best advice in a certain circumstance, and it triggered that the trust is not there. If the trust is not there, then why would you continue, or why would companies continue to go down that route and pay a larger price, maybe for a lesser quality of advice? So trust, I think, is what's missing, how do we think boutique companies, boutique consultancies, like the one that you're involved in, and the one that I'm involved in as well, of how do we educate the larger companies out there that they're better off going down the route with us over the Big Four now?
Well, first of all, let's just set a couple of definitions out there. I don't consider neither my company nor and part of our group nor yours are really a boutique in the sense that people usually understand boutique. Boutique is usually, one or two partners, a very small team, very focused, hyper focused on one or two topics. This is how I understand boutique. Once you reach a certain scale, where as I call it, you could be certain center of gravity for a certain topic, then and you expand a larger team that covers that kind of multiplies the skills and the abilities of everyone there, then you kind of move, I think, more into the realm of you are as good in terms of capability as any large team within a, let's say, top 5 company, and they might have 100,000 people globally. But if we talk about a certain topic and you already have 30, 40 people, then you could already benchmark yourself against those. And that's how I will separate this boutique, really a few people doing something to a. The difference is, I think, also in the ability to have the financial strength, and also the team scalability to service a really large enterprise customer, which the boutiques are usually excluded for, say, for, let's say, pure advisory, high level consultancy, but not really carrying a project through that's really a, I don't know, 100 maybe that was per definition, maybe a 10,000 hours project, right? Can you do a 10,000 hours project?
I mean, that's a really good point, and like drawing that line of where we think boutique is, and if what's in the middle then, because obviously you got the Big Four, you got the boutiques, which and we can see where that boutique boundary comes through to a specialism. So a consultancy that's specializing in a certain part of the ecosystem, or be it data, be it cloud, be it infrastructure, be it applications. There's specialisms, and there's let's say specialism consultancy companies that maybe have grown from boutique and just got that slightly bit bigger, that they can provide that continuity. And a term I like to use is is small enough to care, big enough to deliver. And
Exactly.
yeah, and I think that's where the boutiques are using that classification of a 3, 4, 5 man band. They obviously care. It's they're very close to business. They're probably acting as doing the consultancy themselves, but they're probably not seen, and to be fair, not big enough to provide that delivery assurance. So I think we talked about specialism versus one shop stop shops. Get my teeth in there, or a collection of specialisms. And do you see now? This is a loaded question because I think I know the answer. Do you see now a place now for collaboration between multiple specialisms that known ways of working, like-minded, same ethics, that can provide the same, if not provide the same coverage, but still be small enough to care?
Well, absolutely. I think your point with collection of specialisms is pretty much on point here, because the way that you could do this is, let's say, a regional midsize. If you consider let's take a step back. If you consider the 3-person band boutique on the one hand and the 100,000 person company, on the other end, like, why is there a reason for a mid-range, like say 500 to 1,000, 500, 2,000 people company to exist, right? Which purpose do they serve? And they are usually successful if they're really good at a collection of specialisms.
Yep.
And in the new way of working, I think another point that is tangent here is the collaboration versus competition. It used to be a very zero-sum place, but this business is turning so quickly, and technology keeps changing so much, and that actually the companies that are successful would be the ones that can adapt and care, be big enough to deliver, but small enough to care about a more targeted approach to their specialisms, right?
Yep.
Because with the big companies, teams keeps changing. They can deliver a really big project, but if you were to seek advisory for like a latest set of technologies, and we are in the data space, we're looking at a set of technologies that we're following very closely. Well, then we have an advantage, right? Just because we're specialized, and so this thing in the middle is quite good. And one point that I would add is also, our approach, for example, is also to be hyper local, but have global corporations. And this brings kind of bridges the gap between being close to your customers, understanding their situation, their need, being able to be a strategic partner, but not wanting to do everything on your own, being able to enter into partnerships to deliver really what's best for them, but at the scale that they need, and not just, in the old, let's say the old style of thinking, capture the entire account and, try to do everything, because obviously experience shows you aren't going to be great at it. Might work for a while, but not for, it's not sustainable.
And it goes back to that trusting. So if you pretend you're great at everything, you're going to lose the trust on the thing you are good at. So it's better to be honest up front and say, look, we know this bit, but we work with these people that really know that bit very well. We suggest that, working with them. I think it's that mindset for maybe consultancies as well, to think, not giving that work away. The fact that their clients, the end game is to make your client happy, and you get loyalty from that client, longevity from that client, and just for the sake of like sharing the love and actually getting someone in specialism rather than you try and do it yourself will probably help with both of those things. And you never know what happens. That community, that person gets you in somewhere else. It becomes, a collaboration where it's back to that community thing. And I think that's what LinkedIn has provided, a better access for community for. Like, for example, we wouldn't have met or kept in touch if it wasn't via LinkedIn or some of the things. And that's the same with probably lots of other people that have building up relationships of, knowing where other people's specialisms is and working a collaboration when it makes sense.
100%. Yeah. I could add, situation, trust. This is usually, at the end of the day, trust is a key component, whether you're a boutique, a mid-sized, or, a consultancy, or like the largest firm there is in the field. But what I think the differentiator, and this is a discussion that we had with you, saying, well, when is the customer always right? This is a segue into that, saying, well, trust means also that you can tell them when they're wrong, when you think they're wrong, or when you tell them that you don't have enough information to make the call. Usually, otherwise you'd be advising on when you're too low resolution on a subject, you deliver just the standard kind of like what the industry have, let's say use case, how others do it, but you don't understand. You're not trusted enough to be a strategic partner, but just like a transient vendor delivering some project. Then you aren't really in a position to fully understand, and thus to fully advise the customer properly. And that's what be ethical to say, you know what, guys, we are knowledgeable on this topic, but we're just lacking your context to deliver this for you. And I think not a lot of advisory firms and consultancies are honest enough to say that, and at least that used to be the old way. And now in the new way, I think it's more based on, as you said, on community, on network, and an ability to, as you just rightly pointed out, if you aren't the best at something that's fit for purpose for this particular client, then you can work with others who are, while controlling the result and being able to make your customer happy, because at the end of the day, that's the most important thing, but not to make them more happy than necessary. Let's put it this way.
Well, over delivering can be useful, but if you don't want to get them used to it all the time, otherwise you've raised the bar too much, because it's not over delivering now, it's the norm. But I think it leads on to the next point, is that client relationship versus a process driven approach. And I think from what I've seen and how we work is, it's a combination. We have a standard process, but it is very much based on our client relationship. So we say, this is how we've seen it done, and the reasons why we think it should be done that way, rather than a process-driven approach where everyone always goes this way. Right? We're telling you to do it this way without the client understanding why you're doing it that way, which then leads them not understanding context, which doesn't help with you getting the end goal of delivering what they actually need, because you don't have that feedback loop with the business if you're just telling them, if it's a one-way street. So having that trust where you can tell the client they're wrong, but telling them wrong in a right way. So there's a I think the expression is it's telling someone their baby's ugly. They don't want to know that, you can't tell them that, but you have to deliver the message in a way that it's constructive and the reasoning and rationale for it.
In consultant speak, would say that it needs it has some optimization potential in the appearance space.
Yes, the British are very, very bad at not speaking their mind as well. And with respect, I think it needs a little bit of an overhaul, which normally means it's a bag of rubbish. I think that's not having a one size fits all approach, and I think that is something that you can provide if you have that good client relationship.
But let me ask you something. How do you think this differs, in particular in our data space? How is that different from, let's say, doing standard, IT implementation projects?
So I think that it's the ordering. So on which order you do it in the prioritization. So if you go with say a very prescribed approach where you're dictating, right, you're going to do this, you're going to do this, you're going to build up this ingest framework, we're going to build this framework, we're going to do this, and it's all very much driven because they can how much consultancy they can get to go and build this stuff. The problem is they've forgotten about the end clients. The end clients still waiting for something to be delivered, and what they're building may be really good, but they don't know that for sure, and it might not be in the right order, in the right at the right maturity to unlock the potential the business has. And if you're able to do that in a way which we talk a lot about this, to chat to Matt Halsey about this, is there's a playbook of UCUM, but there's no one size fits all. And it's not until you actually understand each individual business strategy to work out, okay, what is really relevant for them, but then not to do a 3-month strategy document and then hand it all over at the end. It's finding things on that journey that will help inform that strategy even more, but actually get buy-in from the stakeholders to keep them on that journey. And I think I have seen that you see some of these big four, they're just in there touting, oh, we'll do this project, we'll do that one, but they're not actually making sure that it's coordinated and actually linked to any business initiative that has a requirement now, not in 6 months' time.
It's a very good point. The analogy that I could give is, and this also brings me to the point of, collection of specializations. Think of the international hotel chains. Like, let's take, just for example, Marriott. You have a different specialization for a different, market. You had the JW, you have the Standard Marriott, and you have the, I guess, the Moxie or the lower end. And so they're very distinct, offerings. But the machinery in the back builds on the same, I guess, on the same structures. So there's common infrastructure behind it. And this is also, I think, in the data space and in our spaces, what's your, on the one hand, tooling expertise that cuts across different industries, but also what's your industry capability? What's your domain knowledge that you bring to the client? Because this helps, supercharge whether the project is, there was a lot of discussions and requirements and, misunderstandings at the beginning, or where you hit the ground running, right? So you also can replicate that and build on top of that capability. And in this way, I think it's slightly different than working according to specs for, like, I don't know, a mobile app or other types of, let's say, more standard IT implementation project that you order through an agency or external consultancy. So I think the data space is, as you said, this very, the domain knowledge kind of differentiates you from, advising in an area where you already, kind of know how things work. Like, we work in banking, we kind of know how a bank works. You have experience there as well. Once you have experience in automotive, it's another sector where, they're different but similar. And fast moving consumer goods. So all of that, I think, builds up to your kind of adds to the data consultancy and makes you more like a center of gravity, where you'll be able to utilize this domain knowledge when you advise customers in kind of, or you can foresee certain, let's say, scenarios where the customer thinks they're right, but they really ain't, and you have to tell them why, without hurting their feelings, and actually being positive about what they should change in order to be successful with their initiative.
And I think with that domain knowledge, it puts you that trust or credibility factor that when you do challenge them, they're not just going to either nitpick your idea or focus on some slight terminology change you've got, which it loses momentum and other people don't go with it because they don't know if that's the right way of doing it now because it's been challenged. But if you're able to, otherwise it's take them on the journey as well, isn't it? But if you're able to take them on the journey with that conversation and relate to them in the fact that you do understand that domain, that the requirements come much quicker, the agreements get much quicker, and that trust gets built up much quicker. I would say that the ability to say no, right? If you are unsure about a project, you have a look at it. It's totally okay to say, look, great, I now know more about your company and know more about you, but for various reasons, we're just not going to take this project. And I think that's a really good point. And I don't know if one of my old mentors, boss, he will still work with him nowadays. One of his interview techniques was just challenging people. So, say the example would go, okay, right, the project's running behind schedule. What are you going to do? Oh, I'm going to work longer hours. Okay, right. Okay, fine. Project still behind schedule. What are you going to do? Oh, I'm going to work the weekends. Project still behind schedule. I'm going to get new resources. Can't get no new resources allowed. Oh, I'm going to have to de-scope things. Can't de-scope things. And it was pushing until the point where someone say, well, I can't do it. And I think that's something that isn't a common thing nowadays of people to be able to say no.
But you know what the difference is? Just to reflect on that is, I think that's where we split kind of the difference between advisory, consulting, and implementation work. Is sometimes that they get mixed. If you're talking about advisory, you just scope to budget, right? If there's no time, we'll just do whatever we can do in the time, and we just call it a great success. But if it's actually delivering software, creating a data pipeline, creating a new, data platform, data store, data whatever, operational store, warehouse, whatever you want, there is a clear definition of whether it's done or not done, right?
Yeah.
And oftentimes you get bogged down because you get bogged down on dependencies where the customer would, or you would not foresee that they're there. You have the wishful thinking glasses on, and there's also another point where it'd be like, you know what, guys, we can already forecast that this thing is going to go nowhere. And it kind of, when people will be like, "What? Hold on a second. Why do you think that is? We're not there yet. Everything seems to be looked." I mean, it's easy to say that once things go wrong, but I think the art is to do it foreseeing when things are going to go wrong and try to steer them. Say, look, if you don't provide this and that, it's all great, but maybe we should just close this down and not move forward until you guys do it. They have like a wake up call, and actually, some people might be, especially if you have like an operational team, that there's a bit of a immediate bad blood going on, and then you'd have to advise the customer or highlight, say, look, this is the better thing for you until we figure this and that out, and then we can move forward. And I think that creating this kind of trust is really the let's say the aerobatics of the data advisory, because otherwise people make slides and discuss things and approaches and solution designs and architectures, but before you get the teams rolling on implementing something, you have to be really knowledgeable that it's going to be a success.
I mean, we're all experts on hindsight. My hindsight skills are brilliant. I always clark back at what I should have done, but I think it's the foreseeing things and actually, that validation where they're going it's not going the right way, and to say it rather than just to know, we're still getting paid as a consultancy company. Going to do this stuff doesn't matter, because you're only as good as your last piece of work, which is what's maybe getting the big four into some of these spaces nowadays. But
intuition is recognition, right? I mean, you have, if you take stock and understand what, when you recognize these patterns, it's a matter of, whether it's early on, but maybe there's certain clients you don't want to take altogether, right? And save yourself and the team just, basically do a good job on not taking certain clients. Then once you get to a client, there are certain projects you don't want to take. You're like, okay, we could do that and not the other. And so that's really non-obvious. And the hindsight is it really helps. And this is kind of also one of the things we discussed is a segue saying, well, some obviously the difference between, let's say, mid-size and boutiques, what the large companies don't really have in abundance and have surprisingly little of, is to say experienced people who've done this before. They do have and have a great brand name, get the brightest graduates, that they do this quite well, and understandably so. But then people don't tend to stay along a lot longer. Now I know that's changing, and if anyone from Big Four, absolutely fully in agreement with you, ex-alumni, only good things. But there are still differences, right? The differences is you have the ability in a boutique or a mid-sized company to have people who have gone back to the industry, have done these things, being responsible for those projects, have this ability to have the hindsight on how things work, and then go back in and advise again. Now, obviously, some of the big companies have that as well, but not nearly in the abundance, in the thousands and thousands of people that they claim. And so this one advantage that you and I could build on in our particular setups, to say we've done this before. We have we have the luxury of the hindsight.
The battle scars. I like to call them the battle scars. You learn by not just your successes, but you also learn by your failures or collective failures that you've been able to share and communicate with others. Saying, "No, this is what happened. Oh, I can see why that would have happened. Yeah, great. I'm not going to go down that route myself." So there's a good question here actually as well, which I'll just pull up as well. How difficult or challenging to compete against the Big Four? So I've got some views on this, but how do you how have you experienced that, Karl?
Well, there's various angles you can take, right? As you mentioned, you have to be big enough to deliver, small enough to care. I think there's a hygiene factor is necessary, but then what extra what is it in addition that you can bring, right? If you bring a great domain expertise, if you've done these projects before, and particularly if you can bring a fresh new approach and not something that usually the bigger companies get the bigger projects, so they can tell you they would go in and pitch you things that they did a 2-year, 3-year project, which was great. But like, okay, you're selling me Hadoop now. It's just an example. Be not anymore, but just a couple of years ago, be the example of a big four coming to you to build a Hadoop platform where you're like, you know what, I'm still looking at Snowflake or BigQuery, and actually Hadoop. I mean, great for you guys, but you really are looking backwards and not forward. And there's a certain momentum there to offer solutions and to replicate large projects, which you can, you could be more nimble and try to offer a fresh view.
Yep.
One of the other advantages and clear, obvious advantages is you don't have this conflict of interest with the, with the audit mandates, right? So you have, you always have to adhere to ethics and professional standards and whatnot, but you aren't an accounting company, right? So that puts you in a position to advise on IT infrastructure and data that's somewhat unique, right?
Yep.
Because if you're a big four, chances are you worked for the big companies for many things, and you're excluded from doing certain work just for pure compliance reasons. So this is also another advantage that you have as a specialized vendor of IT services, where you don't do much else other than provide technical solutioning and solve technical issues and deliver projects.
Yep.
So there are ways to compete, but also what I would pose, turn the question around and say, actually, what I'm interested in the new way of thinking is not pure. And obviously, for some projects, there is on a project level, it's competition. But what we should more be thinking of is how to cooperate, how to bring more value and work together. And obviously, it could be with other consulting companies, with the big four, with the big three, with various other partners, just to make sure that we can support our clients and our companies, right?
Exactly. I think it's a good ethical view of it. Is it, well, at the end of the day, we just want to have our clients get the end results that they want. And to answer the same question is the times that we've been successful in challenging before. It's always by example. So it's when we're working alongside them, and they realised, okay, they may be a cost a bit more, but the output evidence is it's a better spend of money. And I think that's the difficult and challenging part, is if you're doing a tender or like a large RFP or something, you're never going to win on price. You're not going to be able to, because you'll be undercut by the big four, but the quality that you get will probably reflect the price that you were given. And you may not actually get the delivery dates that were being proposed. So yeah, I think it's tough beating them on like the RFP landscape, because it's not impossible, but it's a tougher one. I think competing with them or challenging them in an existing client is okay. Right, it makes sense to use these guys for this bit, and I'll use the offshoring for this bit, and or offshoring all the big four with an offshoring capability. So I think it's working out how, to your point, Karl, if we want to all work more collaboratively together, then maybe the big four should specialize in what they're really good at, and then work alongside midsize and maybe boutiques that can fill the gaps that they've got in their knowledge.
And the other option is clearly you have your own nearshore and offshore, right? I mean, we have, for example, our own nearshore here in Europe, and so it really depends on the value proposition. Whether it's more, let's say, standard things like maintenance, like operating certain, in our case, data stores, data warehouses, and pipelines, machine learning operations. Like, there should be a reason for this to be in Europe, to be here. There's advantages to that. There's also the ability for you to cooperate with great companies that are from offshore, and be able to compete by saying, you guys could deliver an offshore, we could deliver an offshore as well. It's not like they're bringing machinery, right? It's just having the proper set of people that could deliver on the project and for this customer. So I think, there's certain economies of scale to that. So if you could scale up in a way where, I need 1,500 people in India, and you can spawn this team in a month, like there's value to that. But I think we're moving to a world where this is less and less relevant for various reasons. First of all, I don't know your viewers, but there was nothing better to happen to consulting than the COVID crisis, right? This was the best thing consulting ever experienced since
I have to agree.
It was great.
Unfortunately, it was one good thing that came out of that period. Yeah.
Yeah, this is excellent, and this is a sustainable thing that to stay, regardless of how many people go back to the office or think this is a great idea, which in some cases it is. But still, the ability to cooperate and to deliver things where you thought, okay, you had to be this behemoth, huge company that could do this, is, I think, slowly eroding, and more flexible, approaches are here, where you could save for the very, very largest global multinationals, right? There are certain cases where you absolutely need this, but in your standard case, where most of us would work with, let's say mid-sized, even large European companies, they really don't need a delivery center with 2,000 people sitting there. This is the nature of work is changing. Also, what these guys are doing in these centers. So, and I must say, I, for example, personally had great experience with working with India. So have some offshore experience, knowing how it operates and what are the advantages and some of the some of the disadvantages.
I mean, there's some great, and we have a large supermarket we're working for, and we have an offshore partner we work with. But it's that trust factor. We know them. We know how they're selected. We know the quality that's been there in the past. There's we. Even though in that case it's like a box of chocolates, we know the chocolates we're getting. It's all the ones we like. It's the right quality chocolates.
There's also reverse cases. There's cases where you get extremely good expertise from offshore centers, and you have the majority of, let's say, lower quality work done on site for various reasons. There's also this example, which sometimes people find astounding, but there is that as well. So it doesn't really mean, this is difficulty discussing with many clients, saying this old thinking of nearshore, offshore is lower quality or just cheap, whatever standard stuff. This definitely is not the case anymore. And there's huge, obviously huge variance in the quality, but you could have either or. You could have very expensive offshore, capability of people that are really good. But obviously then this isn't, you get them just because you're able to work with them remotely, but not because there's a million of those people that you can access, right? So this is the advantage that now with the post-COVID, I know your experience is just hire people where they live in Europe and let them work for you. And that's just an extreme advantage to how it was before, right?
It does help, because if you are just geographically restricted as well, you're not going to get the best people. But having that flexibility, I mean, it does make sense. And I think especially like project inceptions or big planning exercises, if you can get some people around the table, it's much more productive. But for a majority of project, that's not the case, and the overhead or cost of bringing everyone in for that particular discovery piece is worth it. So I got another one. I know, even though it comes up LinkedIn user, I know it is. I've got my phone at the side, keeping an eye on the names, because no more names comes up. That's from Ramona. It's a really good point, which is, when you collaborate with a big one, who's in charge, who owns the project, and it's a very key thing. I think it's a good old RACI helps with that, or a clear understanding of what your deliverables are. And working to that, not using a data contract, but that contractual, this is what I'm providing. And that trust thing as well is that flexibility of, not everything can be all up front defined of what those what the shape that is, but that enough flexibility. But it's who owns a project, and if you work with a big one, it's normally on their paperwork. So unfortunately, they would be the owning the project on that particular case. But you never know, after working there, they may see what you've done, and it may swap roles.
Right. And also, our experience, it does make sense once you get a particular size where in some projects, your role might be just to be a more of a general contractor, managing very capable. So there's some capabilities where it's like, look, this is highly specialized, and I don't want to build this capability to perfection. Let's consider something more exotic, like I don't know, Hadoop is no longer relevant, but let's say certain particular, like, or specialty in Oracle Exadata, something, right? Where you might have one or two people, but then if you have an engagement where you need a larger team of that, well, it makes sense to cooperate with a boutique or another team, or a team from another company. Then you'd be like, if you're doing the general contractorship and you're responsible, then you're responsible. That doesn't mean that their particular teams aren't on their own to deliver what they need to deliver. So it isn't like when whoever's on charge can have their say. and is responsible for the quality. But it's this is what I think the quality of the overall setup matters, and like things like racy metrics or clear responsibilities definition really helps.
Definitely.
The data space, we're always kind of in the middle, neither central nor decentral, neither at the customer nor at our side. There's always this, multitude of interfaces when you're doing the work, and quickly derails if not managed.
and this would get me on my bugbear of having a good architect involved, rather than everyone being engineers and maybe just a product owner or something like that. I can't stress enough of actually having a good architecture design that you're all working off that's all commonly understood. I love Miro, and I'd live by it. I don't know what I'd do without it, but using that to actually like collaborate on designs and refine designs, and then everyone knows what they're working towards, and it's a much clearer understanding of how it all fits into the bigger picture. Definitely helps with that team sort of collaboration, that we're all working on something together on this picture. So I
second that. I absolutely agree, and I think this is why this data implementation business is, let's say, in our experience, is like a third is consulting and in technical architecture, a third is implementation, and a third is operations. And if you'd asked me 2 years before, what I've thought would be the breakdown, I think it would be much more implementation heavy. And your point with the architecture is absolutely right on the money, because oftentimes the client would come and say, okay, here's what a project I want to deliver, and if you run this through your architect, then a different project comes out. And some clients recognize this outright and say, look, we have an idea about a new data store or whatever. Do advise us on how to build it. And it's super. This rolling is absolutely critical, especially since it also requires the soft skills that your architect doesn't go in there, or a team of architects, and
architects can tell you your baby's ugly in a nice way,
and it's not cognizant of their particular of how much they understand the particular organization, and where this finer differences emerge, where it becomes more like business rather than technical, and it's all I guess it's a lot more of an art than a science, I would say.
Yes, I agree. I definitely agree on the art thing. I think I did a DJ mixer one time. It says the art of mixing, but it's the art of mixing your project. You've cost, deliverables, scope. You've got lots of things you can tweak it with, and the little knobs and buttons to help deliver that set, or in that DJ method or DJ analogy. But yeah, it's definitely an art in it. It's not just I think we said it earlier, one size fits all. I'm just looking through. I'm just looking through some of the. We've covered some. I'm going to dip into one of them we touched on. Really, is that hyperlocal and or global reach versus local priorities and global priorities.
Right.
So, and linked onto that. The post-COVID world, where we have that flexibility of where we get people, but also having that element where people still want to look you in the eye sometimes, especially when a project's going wrong, or especially at a design stage, or a complex options that you need to go through and have them having that combination is the best mix, I'd say. So. How do you see getting the best out of that hyperlocal versus or the global reach?
Right. I think that plays into if you remember the early times of COVID, people thought, okay, globalization is being rolled back, and I was thinking, well, it's going to change. It's not going to be rolled back. It's just going to adapt. It's going to be a different paradigm that emerges for the way companies operate, the way they cooperate and prefer to do certain, I guess, in our space, IT implementation and complex IT work projects. And so what emerged, I think, worked quite successfully in my case, in our case, is having the ability, like we work for the core markets, Austria, Germany, Switzerland. This is where our clients are, and so being here and being able to be close to them and speak the language in the various sense, understand the business, being able to meet often as necessary to understand the issues and understand, anticipate problems and take measures to get the projects in line is very key. However, the clients at the same time expect you to come with all of the advantages that a globalized world still allows you to have. Certain cost advantages by having nearshore captive center, by being able to cooperate with global partners to deliver this. So at the end of the day, you have to be both, right? You can't be, you can't be. We can't be all sitting on the beach or in the mountains working from there and expecting that everything will be great. This works on an individual level, but on a larger, more complex project structure. At the end of the day, someone is sitting close to the customer, and so that's one. But the global, I think the global aspect hasn't changed, right? So that you still have to have all that, and so combining this in a hyper local setting where you really are close to the customers, while at the same time you have offices and presence and the ability to work with talent and people from, I don't like the word with talent. It's not with talented people across the region that you're based, is is combining the best of both, right? For certain people, like in the data space, we see like in the implementation or operation space, you really could be sitting anywhere. However, at a certain point, if you do want to, also be in the position to build out a junior early career people to help them progress in their career, well, it makes sense to be present in multiple locations, to give them the option to be there. Yeah. And so that kind of, I think, is how it combines.
And you just, I've just going to write a note about the, we've been in the game a while. We've had the opportunity prior to COVID and always on premise. You're always on site. There was the odd day maybe you could negotiate working from home. So you had a doctor's appointment, every now and then, or everyone expects you to be in the office. And from that, there's a lot of stuff we've learned, and just overhearing conversations, being able to shadow someone, pair programming didn't mean you had to be logged on the same Zoom session for 10 hours or so. Being able to have that water cooler conversation, and I mean, they are beneficial at our stage of the career. I agree, but they're crucial and critical, I think, to the next generation. And what we building up our consultancy, which leads quite nicely onto one of the ones I was going to say, what's special in growing a data team. So I think it comes under that question we're going to talk about. And I think we can't grow the next generation all remotely, or they won't get that speed of acceleration of their knowledge the same that we had the luxury of, without having some level of on-site presence or ability to drop in to have we have mentors internally, like a mentor hierarchy of people can go and drop in and speak to their one. They used to let me, but nowadays I don't get to mentor my own staff nowadays.
Well, theoretically,
they better people now.
They can, but it becomes more like a computer game type of situation. Yeah. If they're absolutely crazily dedicated, and in the very, I fully agree, in the standard setting, you just have to be, if you take a cognizant decision for you to be a organization that provides the mentors and builds up younger people in the data space, absolutely necessary to have ability to mentor them on site and to do various other things to make sure they're successful, get up to speed quickly. Purely online, remotely, this is difficult.
Yeah, agree. So what's special in growing a data team? So we've both done this. Why do you think maybe we're better, or why do you think our approach, or maybe the approach you take, is different than maybe the Big Four, from your experience?
Well, because you get to do two things, right? To be successful in that data space is, well, you have to know the legacy technologies, and you have to really and you have to embrace the legacy, and not make fun of it, not just think it's, not look at it in a cynical way. But you have to understand that, like, there's a reason why certain technologies have stayed on for so long, and they work well. And while at the same time, knowing the modern technologies, knowing the vendors, having the partnerships, being able to advise, okay, if this is the situation that we have now, this is what we operate, that cost with those, with those whole set of, circumstances around it, how do we transform this? And you can't really do this unless you understand both worlds, understand the kind of the modern world and in the old world, and take a focus team that's just looking at that and already have an advantage over, over others who aren't really focused on this particular bit. Because one thing you alluded to is, we've done this for a while. We know the technologies. It takes a while to know this space. It isn't, you can't just, just come out of nowhere and know how, people use databases, data modeling and first generation, data lakes and all those systems, and have like, a proper way to migrate them, or to propose to them, or to execute on a upgrade mission that will really move the needle for the customer. So you have to kind of build both capabilities, and that's something you could grow over time, right? It can't take that. And also another thing is, especially in the data team, is that's why you need a lot. Like what we do is spend a lot of time sharing knowledge between the different colleagues who have experience with the older, with newer tools, where both understand each other and are successful in implementing these changes. Because that, if you consider most larger projects, if you say, okay, how many lines of code were written? Well, surprisingly little compared to the overall effort, right? And so so that understanding is almost like implicit knowledge that the team has, that kind of adds up, accumulates over time, and I think that's particularly special to building a data team. You're not just delivering on clean sheet specs, and just the thing you need to know is the latest framework, and then you're good to go. You have to know the history to be able to work with the older tools, and understand what to touch and what to leave, and what to migrate and when.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we've started doing we have knowledge bases and things like that, and we have like internal projects where we build things that are either for demonstrations or to prove things out, or to help create, the I call it the glitter and sprinkle that we put on top of everything else. It's the added value of working with a smaller company that it provides you frameworks, things on top, going above and beyond a bit more, of just, rather than just doing what you've been asked, when that, by the way, you're going to have this in place as well. It's easier for us to do at the same time. We've already done this before, and I think
right.
But back to growing that data team, and I think another thing I've noticed over my time within this industry is you get pigeonholed in certain areas, and you only get to see that piece of it. And I had the luxury at the beginning of being a one-man data warehouse team. You had to know everything. If you didn't, you had to like wing it, work it out, and then work out how to do it better later, next time. But yeah, I got to see every piece, every part of the puzzle. So it's very easy later on, as that puzzle became when I started, it was maybe a 100-piece puzzle. Now it's up to that 10,000-piece one, and there's so much blue sky in there that you don't even know where the pieces go together. But having been able to, I think you use it to zoom out from a very understanding the basic components of how it all works, to be able to zoom out to that bigger picture, and then go, this is how we would have tackled that in the past. Now I get, I'm going off topic slightly, but I get annoyed where we keep reinventing the wheel of things that are already there. Why are we going back to like 101 of data modeling? It's not new, but it's a necessary thing that needs to be done, because we've moved away too far from the knowledge that of when it was a standard process.
What I usually say is, data business is people's business, right? More so than in other spaces. And I also use this, another analogy I use is this, I know I've seen this before. I don't know who has the copyright on that, but I found it very accurate. And as in the data space, it's this midwit trap meme, right, with the bell curve, and basically, let's say the intellectually challenged and the genius, they both agree it's a people's business, and they kind of like the people in the person in the middle thinks it's about the technology, about this particular super cool thing, but what they don't understand is that it's very transient, and whatever is very cool today is already outdated tomorrow, and in the data space you have to kind of rely on working with people, and also understanding the why certain things are implemented in ways they are. So there's like a whole set of, the data space is the space where we have, I think every IT project struggles for documentation, but the data warehouse is one that usually gets hit the hardest now with data catalogs, and this renewed interest in this enterprise data governance. We're seeing the change, but which is a very welcome change. But I must say this, precisely because you're seeing that interest across the board, what that tells you is that not everyone has this and is as far as they would like to be. And so it's also another thing that is a good trend.
It is. I think, there's not often hype cycles are actually for benefit, but I think the focus on generative AI, which has triggered the focus on data quality, which has triggered the focus on better data management, data governance, it's a good thing. I just wrote on a comment, I always like to use this is, it's look to the past to innovate for the future. So there's always recipes of how things were done, and they can be adapted. And look what data ops is born from DevOps. DevOps is born from lean methodology. So it's all everything's all been connected.
Oh, absolutely. And I guess the data space has seen a lot of these hype cycles and they survived through it. But now with the Gen AI, it's more like it's not even starting from the C-level. It's like supervisory boards and management boards are asking the executives, okay, are we doing, are we not missing out? Fear of missing out on Gen AI. Are we good on this?
Yeah.
And up until it trickles down to the CEO, CTO, and they're like, trust me, we're doing stuff, but see these investments you've been blocking on these and that and the other data initiative where you don't see this clear business case, where it's a really tough sell to tell you why we need to re-platform and to invest in data quality. Well, now you get it. Connect the dots is not that hard.
Exactly.
And so I think this is a tailwind for the data initiatives.
It's good. And a well-needed one.
A well-needed one, but it will, the dust will settle, and now it'll be like, okay, just like previously, if you remember the previous waves of machine learning where people are like, oh, we're going to do, ROI of 500%, of 600%. Yeah, on a volume of nothing, right? So
exactly.
Yeah.
It should have been called small data with big tools. I just had to put this one. I love this one as well. Is that history is not only the terms technology, but patterns and design. Exactly. I think there's
absolutely.
Information lifecycle management, I think, is one of the ones I predicted being reinvented, which is now we've got Iceberg and different tiers on Iceberg. We've got external tables being supported by Databricks and Snowflake, different version files, but that whole information lifecycle management piece comes in of how you put the right data at the right tier of storage based on the requirements, and then roll it off to archive it at some point when it's no longer needed, because it becomes a liability after a certain many years, because the value has gone in it by then, or maybe regulatory, you can't keep it anymore. So I think we're coming up to the end, and we've probably got a few updates that we can share of things happening. I'll start with the one that is, next week I'm going to have Hugo Liu on there. I haven't got an update on the title. We'll come up with something cool. But yeah, so we'll be having a chat with him next Monday. We've got a meetup in the London meetup. I think is going to be the 17th. Check that. 17th of January. And then Skiers and Data is happening. Ivo's going to be there showing off some of his fancy automation software. So we're looking forward to that. But Ivo, do you want to share with the audience maybe how they want to get a hold of you, or what you're up to? Connect
with me on LinkedIn, Karl Ivo Sokolov, and I'll be happy to share more on our code migration AI assisted workflow tool link, which we are building out now with the team, and it's looking great. It's tailored around migrating SaaS SAS code to Python and SQL, and COBOL to Java. So these are the things that I'll be talking about at Skid, and I'm looking for that, but also to skiing the slopes with you. So this is
yeah, it's a conference with a bit of fun as well. So yeah, looking forward to it as well.
Yeah.
And I think one more thing. Any of the US audience, I'm at Data Day Texas on the 27th of January for the presentation. I haven't finished yet, so that's one of the things I've got to do. Anyway, well, okay, I think that's a wrap. Thank you very much, Karl. Ivo, I've always swapped between going them. Yeah, great to chat as always. Looking forward to speaking again soon.
It's a pleasure, Chris.
And yeah, thanks everyone for tuning in. Until next week.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Cheers, bye.